Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the pretty fascinating, and let's be honest, often misunderstood, world of the teenage brain. We're going to unpack why adolescence can feel so intense, not just for teens, but for everyone around them, by looking at some really cool psychology around identity and what actually motivates us.
You know, for over a century, the go-to image of a teenager has been one of chaos, right? Rebellion, emotional roller coasters, this whole idea of storm and stress. But where did that even come from? And is it really the whole story? Okay, let's get into it.
To really get a handle on the modern teenager, we first have to jump in a time machine and see just how radically our view of these years has changed.
Believe it or not, before the late 1800s, the idea of adolescence just didn't exist. You were a kid, and then boom, you were basically a mini adult with adult jobs and responsibilities. But that all changed in 1904, when a psychologist named G. Stanley Hall came along and basically defined adolescence as this turbulent, chaotic phase. Now, of course, we know it's way more nuanced. It's this dynamic process that's shaped by everything from your biology to your culture.
So, if being a teen isn't just about surviving a storm, what's the real mission? Well, one of the biggest jobs is figuring out the answer to that huge question, who am I? And thankfully, a psychologist named James Marcia gave us this brilliant framework for it, mapping out 4 different paths teens can take on that journey of self-discovery.
What's so great about this framework is that it simplifies this super complex process down to 2 key questions. First, have you committed to an identity, to a path? And second, are you actually out there exploring your options? Now, as we go through these 4 categories, really pay attention to how those 2 things mix and match. It gets pretty interesting, especially with the last 2.
All right, first up is identity achievement. You can think of this as the goal. This is someone who has done the legwork, they've looked around, weighed their options, and then made an informed commitment to who they are. They have a solid sense of direction, but they're still open to learning and growing.
Next, we have what's called identity foreclosure. Now, this person has also made a commitment, but, and this is the crucial difference, they totally skipped the exploration phase. This is often the person who follows a path that was kind of chosen for them, maybe by their parents or society, without ever really stopping to ask, hey, is this what I want?
Then there's identity diffusion. This is the person who isn't really exploring, and any commitment they might have is, well, pretty weak. They can seem kind of apathetic or detached, like they're just floating along without a real sense of purpose.
And finally, we have identity moratorium. This is what you might call the classic identity crisis. This person is right in the thick of it. They're actively exploring all sorts of different options, trying things out, but they just haven't landed on a commitment yet. It can feel confusing and overwhelming, for sure, but this exploration is such a critical part of the journey. Let's make this super concrete. Imagine 4 teens at their first job. The achiever works hard, but keeps their options open for the future. The foreclosed teen digs in, decides this is their career for life, and stops looking anywhere else. The diffused teen, they do the bare minimum because they're just not invested. And the teen in moratorium might look overwhelmed, constantly asking questions, wondering if this is the right thing, trying to figure it all out. They're not unengaged, they're actually overengaged in the question of what to do.
Okay, so this brings up a huge question, right? What is it that pushes a teenager towards that healthy state of achievement and away from feeling lost? The answer isn't just try harder. It actually lies in a really powerful theory about 3 basic needs that fuel all of our growth. It's called self-determination theory, or SDT for short. And the basic idea is that for anyone to really thrive, especially a teenager, they need to get 3 universal psychological needs met. You can almost think of them like essential vitamins for your mind and your motivation.
And what are those 3 psychological vitamins? They are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. These are the absolute engine of our inner drive. So let's break down what each one really is.
So first up is autonomy. And let's be clear, this isn't about rebellion or just being left alone. It's that deep, fundamental need to feel like you're the one steering the ship, that your actions are your own, and that you have a real voice in your own life.
Next up is competence. This is the need to feel effective. You know, it's that awesome feeling you get when you master a new skill or overcome a tough challenge. It's about feeling capable and seeing your abilities grow. And finally, there's relatedness. This one's pretty simple, but so powerful. It's our fundamental human need to connect with other people, to feel like we belong, to care for others, and to feel cared for in return.
Okay, now this is where it all clicks into place.
The two big ideas we've just talked about, how we form our identity and what our core psychological needs are, they're not separate. They are deeply, deeply connected.
So how exactly does feeling like you have a choice, feeling capable, and feeling connected, how does all that actually help a teenager build a strong sense of who they are?
Well, it really all comes down to the environment. When a teenager's world, at home, at school, with their friends, when it supports their needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness,
It's like pouring gasoline on the fire of their internal motivation. They feel safe and empowered to explore the world, to try things, to fail, and to figure out who they want to be. And that right there, that is the road that leads directly to identity achievement.
But of course, the opposite is also true. What happens when a teen's environment constantly gets in the way of those needs? When they feel controlled, or made to feel incompetent, or feel totally isolated?
Well, that kind of environment just shuts down their natural drive to grow. Their motivation gets crushed, and instead of exploring with confidence, they can retreat into that state of confusion and distress that we see in states like diffusion or moratorium.
So what's the big takeaway here? What does this all mean? It means a teenager's identity isn't just something that happens by accident. A healthy, strong identity is the direct result of getting these core psychological needs met.
This pretty much gives us a playbook. To help teens thrive, we need to support their autonomy by giving them meaningful choices. We need to help them build competence by providing challenges that are just tough enough, along with helpful feedback. And maybe most important of all, we have to foster relatedness by creating a secure, stable base of connection and belonging.
And when you look at it that way, it totally reframes the entire conversation about the teenage years, doesn't it? It moves us away from just seeing it as a storm we all have to survive, and towards seeing it for what it is, a critical period of growth where our support can make all the difference in the world. The real question isn't what's wrong with them, it's what do they need from us to thrive.